Hello everyone, today we will continue to look at the content of HCI-Storage. Next, let's take a closer look. One way to expand a storage system, which we mentioned in the last class, mainly introduces two types of ports in our professional course, which are actually based on what? Based on the two types of interfaces for horizontal expansion. Next, we will specifically explain the expansion methods of our storage system. We have two forms of expansion. One is called vertical expansion, and the other is called horizontal expansion. What are the specific differences between them, and what are their advantages? What are the specific advantages and disadvantages? So next, first of all, we will expand on this topic. Actually, you can see an issue from your own phones and computers. The data is constantly growing. No matter how much you clean it up, it will always keep increasing. This is because with many software applications, we have a lot of this. Information, for example, there are many chat records in chat software, right? In other applications, like our shopping apps, there will also be a lot of data, such as browsing history, purchase information, and the specific items you have viewed. Specific needs, such as the detailed information of products you need to browse, order information, etc. This information will definitely keep increasing, no matter how much you try to clean it up, unless you completely uninstall the software. Actually, this is indeed a method. As long as you don't uninstall the software, the space it occupies will definitely keep growing. When you clean it, you can't just delete important data, right? Especially, for example, take chat software, right? Some data is definitely very important, right? You can't just clean it up randomly. As these important data accumulate more and more, they might eventually fill up your phone. In this case, actually, our phones, relatively speaking, are not that convenient to expand in terms of storage, and the same goes for computers. Phones and computers, actually their storage expansion is quite limited. There is a way to expand it. Firstly, the methods are relatively few, and secondly, the maximum size that can be expanded is also quite limited. This actually contrasts sharply with our servers. If we talk about our servers, especially storage servers, once we have set up things like distributed clusters, virtualization clusters, cloud service platforms, or even the simplest network storage, these can all be useful. They can help our storage system to perform a basic expansion of data. With this, right? Because now we are already in a completely 100% digital era, the informatization of enterprises is also accelerating continuously. The scale of business is also continuously expanding. This brings about an obvious problem, which is your data. Indeed, it is increasing more and more. There's no way around it, you can't just delete it. Objectively, the data is indeed increasing more and more. So in this context, the data within an enterprise is actually similar to the goods in our warehouse. As the business develops, the goods will indeed increase. And the capacity configured at the initial stage of the system's storage might just be enough, right? To cope temporarily. What about after 1 or 2 years? You might find that your disk space is no longer sufficient. In such cases, we actually encounter the issue of expansion. This expansion issue must be prepared for in advance and anticipated ahead of time. Don't wait until it's full to address it, because by then it might be too late. So in this regard, the expansion of our storage system has become a key concern for system administrators. Currently, we mainly adopt two methods: horizontal expansion and vertical expansion. Next, we will explain to everyone what vertical expansion is and what horizontal expansion is. Let's first talk about vertical expansion. Vertical expansion is actually a traditional architecture for scaling, which utilizes the existing storage system by continuously adding storage devices to meet demand. For example, we can look at the scale up in this app, which is our vertical expansion. As for central expansion, it is actually equivalent to, well, we will be in this. Continuously adding what? Continuously adding various storage devices. However, this approach actually has a noticeable drawback, which is if your space is insufficient, adding one device is not enough, then adding another is still not enough. Your server, or the room, actually doesn't have extra space, meaning your server. In fact, the storage server has limited space, so there's no place to put more. This is also the case in storage systems. When our storage devices reach a certain number, they may be constrained by physical space and power supply. There are also limitations in terms of cooling, making it impossible to continue adding effective storage resources, thus unable to meet the further growth and the demand for data storage. This is a major issue in terms of important expansion. This semester is relatively traditional, with a more traditional era of central expansion. Why? Because this approach is essentially about directly adding what you need, like adding the hard drives you require to your equipment. Whatever hard drive you need, I will add it. How much space do you need to be stable? Add as much as needed. So after adding space like this, what happens? In the short term, there are no issues, and it's relatively quick. But if you consider it from a long-term perspective, for example, if everything is full. Right? If all the data is full, what do you do in this situation? Right? So, in this context, everyone must pay attention. Our storage, particularly the traditional vertical scaling, mainly allows for quick remediation in the short term. It enables us to quickly address disk failure situations. Or when it's full, the overall advantage here is that the initial operation is relatively simple and convenient. However, it has an upper limit, so it basically becomes unusable later on. The downside is that as our system grows, right? As the scale of the storage system increases, our resources can reach a bottleneck. Reaching a bottleneck is quite normal. This is our vertical scaling. As for horizontal scaling, it's about the two types of interfaces we introduced in the last lesson, right? We introduced two types of interfaces, and horizontal scaling is actually about expansion by nodes. Not by what? Not by storage devices, but by hour. This is based on our nodes as the unit. Nodes, to put it simply, mean adding a new one. Content. Adding new content in. For example, if one server is not enough, well, I'll add another one. If two are not enough, add another one. In this case, what is it actually? It's actually one of our... A main characteristic of horizontal scaling is that its expansion doesn't mean, for example, adding more hard drives to one of our servers. It's not like that. Instead, what is it directly? Expanding a complete new node. The advantage of this is what? Well, the advantage is that the upper limit of your expansion is actually higher. The advantage is that as the scale increases, our unit cost will decrease and efficiency will improve. Of course, if we encounter some software with high complexity, or if the management complexity increases, this is actually one of its main drawbacks. That is, if you have many nodes. There will definitely be issues when you try to make changes, and there will be some problems when you modify it. So here, when adding, you must pay attention to the matters between the nodes. If you want to add a node, you must ensure what? You must gather the relevant commands, as well as query information, status, write, and collect them. After ensuring there are no issues, we can then proceed. So this is one of our... The main differences between scale up and scale out, one is vertical expansion and the other is horizontal expansion. Vertically, it's like we are adding multiple things within the content, like adding multiple disks. Adding multiple disks. Whereas horizontal expansion is not about directly adding disks, but rather directly adding a host. Of course, inside the host. Inside the host, there usually is, right? There usually is our content. So this is the main difference between scale up and scale out, two different ways of expanding capacity. All right, if anyone wants to learn Huawei certification technology or wants to obtain the Huawei certification question bank, please send me a private message. You can also leave a comment below the video for technical exchanges. That's it for today, everyone. Goodbye.